Hello, everybody, and welcome to HFY Ascendant. My name is Jonathan, and I will be narrating this story. This is our first video, by the way, so if you have any feedback, please let us know. All right, let's get started. Havenreach periapsis circled the swollen blue-gray bulk of a super-Earth like a ring of glass balanced on an unseen finger. Spin gravity gave its decks a gentle, constant pull. The low storms crawled slowly over a world whose surface gravity would flatten most starfaring species. For humans, it looked like a place worth training for. Inside a docking arm, the airlock cycled. The artificial pull increased as the chamber matched station spin. Captain Karst Ryland felt the extra weight settle over his boots and shoulders. It was less than Earth gravity, but enough to make his cadets straighten unconsciously. He glanced back. The human detachment stood in two precise ranks, boots locked, faces alert. They were an uneven mix of ages and backgrounds. Fresh cadets like Kalyan Bandari, hardened non-commissioned officers like Sergeant Amaya Rooks, specialists like Dr. Mire Farouk with a med scanner already in her hand. Professor Emoni Ishikawa and Envoy Tendekam Becky waited at the rear, trading a few last quiet words about protocol. The inner hatch spiraled open. Ambassador Eldrin Ishar of the Thalkeen Concordate stood waiting, tall and fluid in a support frame that helped his amphibious body handle dry spin gravity. Beside him, shorter and more angular, scientist Zharkova of the Agrathi Helioforge clade shifted his many limbs with impatient precision. A Valori observer named Luskin Yem floated a few paces back, gliding membranes folded, recording rig silently tracking. "Welcome to Havenreach periapsis," Eldrin said, his translator collar wrapping liquid Thalkeen syllables in crisp trade speech. "Your world has requested a place in this academy for a long time, Captain Ryland. Today it is granted." Karst stepped out, feeling the floor meet his weight. "We're glad to finally be here, Ambassador. Our people have been preparing for this for generations." Jar's eyes, faceted, reflective, moved over the humans, lingering on the lack of exoskeletal supports, the easy posture. His subvocal tones carried a faint edge. "We will see. If your preparation accounts for realities beyond your home gravity." The Valori observer dipped her head. "May I record?" Luska asked. "The Intercultural Archive follows every intake. Your species adds a new data point." Karst nodded. "Record away. We're here to be understood as much as to understand." Havenreach's systems registered the new mass distribution, fine-tuning spin, airflow, and temperature. The station had watched many species arrive. This group walked as if they had grown up in centrifuges and drop towers, carrying bone-deep memories of struggling against an insistent planet. Orientation took place in the Academy's central hall, a cylindrical chamber with tiered seating and a hollow lattice in the center. Above Eldrin's outstretched, webbed hand, worlds spun, blue marbles, cracked deserts, tidally locked half-light orbs. "You were all chosen," Eldrin told the mixed species cadets, "because you stand between your peoples and the mistakes of the past." The projection shifted to grainy footage. A shell of shattered satellites encircling a planet, bits of metal and ceramic multiplying like spores after each collision. Orbital tracks turned red, then disappeared. "This," Zar said, "was one of our border worlds long before this academy. Two rival powers deployed satellite networks without coordinating altitudes, shielding, or fail-safes. One collision triggered a cascade. This is what humans call Kessler Syndrome, a cloud of debris where a usable orbit used to be. On the tiers, tendrils twitched, membranes rippled, pupils tightened. Every spacefaring culture knew some version of that fear. We formed Havenreach, Eldrin continued, so that your generation would not repeat such errors. You will learn each other's tolerances, in metal, in bone, and in trust. He gestured. The hollow reconfigured to display a schedule. Icons color-coded. Near the top, a distinct icon pulsed. Gravitation Trial 1, Level 3. The murmur that went through the hall needed no translation. Thalkeen quietly spoke of emergency harness requisitions. The Grathi cadets checked the seals on their limb braces. Valori shifted uncomfortably. Their species had not been designed to bear long periods of weight. Human cadets leaned forward instead. Callion on the front row felt his heart beat faster. This was what he had trained for in spin corridors and G chambers at home, chasing older kids who swore triple gravity was where real endurance started. Sergeant Rooks's attention swept over her cadets. "You are not here to show off," she murmured, "just loud enough for them. You are here to show control. Remember your training. Remember Dr. Farouk's lectures. Nobody passes out just to impress an amphibian." In the gravitation chamber, the floor was a seamless disk ringed by observation galleries. Beneath the panels, massive flywheels waited to spin up. Wall racks held supports tailored for different biologies. From above, Eldrin, Jar, Orville Kess, the Thalkeen medic, Luska, and senior officers watched as cadets took their places. Thalkeen stepped into exo-harnesses that cradled their backs. Agrathi slotted themselves into jointed frames that spread load across crystalline bones. Valori strapped into webbed cradles designed to distribute stress away from their fragile membranes. Humans, in light exercise rigs and grav boots, simply checked their seals. Baseline gravity engaged, the system intoned. Incremental increase will begin on command. Orville activated a hollow of multi-species anatomy. "Observe," he told the gallery. "Differing tolerances to mechanical load. Many of you share a background in fluid environments or low-gravity worlds. Your circulatory systems rely on gentle gradients. Today you will feel what happens when that gradient doubles, then triples." Dr. Farouk opened her own channel to the human group. "At higher gravity," she said, "blood pools in the lower body. Stretch receptors in your arteries fire. Your heart speeds up. Vessels constrict. Help that process. Tighten your calf and thigh muscles. Use the breathing patterns you learned from old Earth flight manuals. Short, timed exhales with abdominal tension. If you see black tunnel around your vision, bend. Squeeze your legs. Breathe." Callion flexed his toes and fingers. In childhood, he had watched old videos of pilots grunting through high G turns, faces distorted. Now he was about to feel a version of that without the cockpit. "Increase initiating," the system said. Weight pressed down, slow but steady. At 1.2 G, some alien cadets shifted uneasily. At 1.4, Thalkeen harness pistons chirped as they compensated. At 1.5, Agrathi cadets' limbs began to shake. Their frame adjusted, taking more load, but their breathing turned shallow. Hold at 1.5, Azar ordered. Let the data settle. On the floor, human muscles worked more noticeably. Chests rose and fell. Dr. Farouk watched their vitals on her pad and nodded to herself. Heart rates were elevated but not alarming. Move to 2.0, the training director said. Brief plateau, then 3.0. The dial ticked upward. Gravity bit deeper. Light species capillaries protested first. Some Valori signaled withdrawal and were eased back to baseline. A Thalkene's skin darkened at the extremities, pooling blood. Orville adjusted their harness to horizontal. Human boots stayed planted. At 2.5, sweat rolled down Callian's spine. His thighs burned. Stars flickered at the edges of his vision with each heartbeat. Legs Bandari, Farouk's voice came. Use them. You're not a decorative tree. He bent slightly, locking in the rhythm she drilled. The darkness receded. From the gallery, Luska watched the human vitals feed. Blood pressures high but stable. Microvessels under skin glowed with strain but not rupture. She narrated softly into her recorder for later editing. At these loads, most sapiens present signs of vascular compromise within minutes. Human data indicates adaptive responses. Not only are they enduring, but with prior training they appear to function comfortably. 3.0 G, the director announced. Final increment. The floor tried to fuse with every joint. Exo harnesses whined. Mechanical limiters on some alien supports kicked in and took their carriers down to safety modes. The human group remained vertical. They were no longer casual about it. Every line of muscle screamed protest. Still under Sergeant Rook's sharp command, they began to move. Forward, slow jog, she ordered. 1 foot in front of the other. Don't think about the number. Think about form. Boot soles thudded down. The circle of humans shuffled, then found a rhythm resembling a run. Faces clenched, breaths noisy over suit mics, but they moved. In the gallery, silences deepened. A Thalkene spectator muttered that the gravity must be misread. Another officer double-checked calibration. The readings held. 3 times station standard. Luska zoomed in on Callian's face. Wet with exertion, eyes bright, teeth bared not in panic but fierce focus. Humans, she breathed into the recorder, appear to treat severe physical stress as a problem to practice at until it becomes manageable. They have turned suffering into sport. A few minutes later, the system eased the load in steps. Relief rippled through every body on the floor. Med teams moved in, scanning for signs of damage. Later, in a recovery bay, Orville and Farouk compared data. Capillary integrity, heart rate recovery curves, muscle microtears. Not invincible, Orville concluded, but their safety margins are wider. They built their training doctrines around finding and stretching those margins, Farouk said. Earth's gravity, radiation belts, pathogens, they all selected for that. The station's informal networks buzzed. The newcomers were not fragile. They were something else. Classes did not stop. They shifted. In a lecture theater dimmed to simulate night, starfields hung as soft light. Professor Amani Ishikawa stood before a projection of a small red star orbited by a tight chain of worlds. This, she said, is TREPPIST-1. In particular, we will focus on TRAPPIST-1e. The image grew, a rocky planet half lit in ruddy glow, half in shadow. Long before we came here, Amani continued, humans on Earth detected slight dips in this star's brightness and inferred the presence of these worlds. TRAPPIST-1e likely orbits so close that it keeps one face toward its star at all times. We call that tidal locking. Imagine one hemisphere in endless day, hammered by stellar flares, and another in endless night, frozen. Between them, a narrow band of partial light where heat and cold may balance. She watched Thalkeen gills ripple at the idea of frozen oceans, veloury edges quiver at permanent darkness. The tidally locked world is not uninhabitable, she said. Atmosphere can carry heat. The Terminator zone, the band between light and dark, might have liquid water. But inhabitants or visitors must design for extreme gradients. She flicked her wrist. Orbits appeared around the planet. Research stations, communications relays, a halo of infrastructure. The Agrathi Helioforge Clade has built a gravity control array in this system to manage orbital congestion and debris. They wish to avoid what happened in that Kessler cascade we saw earlier. Tsar, seated among instructors, inclined his head slightly. Pride and tension pulled at his thoughts. The array was his life's work and his people's chance at lasting renown. Managing shared orbits requires more than engineering, Imani went on. It requires aligning incentives. Imagine two powers choosing whether to add one more satellite, knowing that each addition raises the risk for everyone. You have a classic dilemma. If both restrain themselves, all benefit. If one overuses, they gain, while others bear more risk. If both overuse, you get catastrophe. She outlined simple game theory payoffs, projected as colored matrices. In repeated interactions, she said, cooperation can emerge. One side extends trust but punishes defection later. Signals matter. Transparency matters. So does understanding what your partner is physically capable of. If you assume they cannot reach a certain orbit, and they can, your strategy collapses. Her gaze touched the human cluster deliberately. We are here to make sure no one operates with those wrong assumptions, she concluded. After class, in the recreation ring, theory met softer realities. Under a dome of adjustable lights, cadets of multiple species gathered around tables. Humans laid out packets of food with the reflex of a species that associates camaraderie with shared meals. Callion opened a pouch and tipped scarlet strips onto a tray. Dried chili, he explained to a curious Velouri. Spicy plant contains capsaicin. That is a pain chemical, Luska said, filaments recoiling. It activates nociceptors. Why would you ingest that? Callion grinned and popped one in his mouth. Heat bloomed along his tongue, imitated fire racing down his throat. He winced and smiled at once. It hurts, he said, but not in a damaging way. Our brains respond with endorphins, natural painkillers that also feel rewarding. Dr. Farouk, sipping water, elaborated. Our liver enzymes break down many plant toxins. Our mucous membranes recover quickly from irritants like this. We evolved in an environment saturated with microbes, venoms, and chemical defenses. Those who managed to tolerate low doses could exploit new food sources. That pressure built a robust detox system. A Thalkeen cadet experimentally sniffed a strip, then pushed the tray back. Our biochemistry would not forgive this. Exactly, Farouk said. The same molecule that human bodies treat as entertainment can hospitalize you. This is why shared mess halls need good labeling. Someone produced a small flask. Ethanol swirled inside. A few humans took measured sips. The Agrathi sniffed and shook their heads, calculating metabolic costs. The Valori outright declined. Laska recorded quietly. Observation. Humans turn stress responses and survival adaptations into social rituals. Exercise, intoxicants, spicy foods, possible impact on their willingness to enter dangerous environments. Not everything was admiration. In a closed conference room ringed by privacy fields, Agrathi and Thalkeen officers met to air concerns. They ran laps under triple gravity, one Thalkeen commander said. Your reports confirm the readings. Are we supposed to be comfortable with that level of toughness? Zarkova extended a limb. Physical resilience is not the issue, he said. Predictability is. We designed the TRAPPIST-1E array for controlled environments and well-trained crews. Humans improvise. They may attempt workarounds we did not anticipate. Eldrin's gaze rested on the silent hollow of the super-Earth below. We built Havenreach to share burdens, he replied. If their improvisation prevented another debris calamity, would you still object? I would prefer we not test that premise on my array, Zar said. The station listened with unblinking sensors. It did not have an opinion. It would soon be forced into one. The emergency came when the Academy's lighting cycle was low, corridors hushed. A priority signal from the TRAPPIST-1E system cut through routine traffic, climbing every filter. In the control amphitheater, displays exploded into red and amber. Orbits around the dim little star shuddered. Icons representing satellites and tugs lurched into wrong altitudes. Trajectory lines intersected like tangled threads. Helioforge Anchor 3 is misfiring. Agrathi Tech reported, voice tight. The gravity control lattice is oscillating outside safe bands. Automated safeties tried to compensate and triggered counter-oscillations. We are in a feedback loop. New icons flared bright white. Collisions. Tiny structures slammed into each other at orbital speed, throwing off shards that threatened other paths. Early-stage Kessler patterns emerged around TRAPPIST-1E. How long until debris density renders evacuation impossible? Eldrin asked. Hours, Jar said, all his earlier confidence stripped away. Maybe less if we get a major impact in a crowded band. Havenreach Emergency Council assembled, species arrayed like a living diagram of different evolutionary solutions to stress. Admiral Heronkotri of Earth stood beside Eldrin and Jar, arms folded, face lined by long years of decisions under pressure. We have tugs that can attempt to deflect high-mass bodies, a Thalkeen officer said. But the varying gravity field will hammer any crew that enters. Our pilots will black out. Our ships are designed for stable gravitational fields, Agrathi continued. The spikes near the array will induce structural and physiological overload. Arun's eyes flicked to the last gravity trial report. Humans have shown capacity to operate at higher G for short periods, he said. We have suits and breathing techniques to push those limits. If we pair our people with your engineers, we may get a team into the control node before the feedback saturates. Zar stiffened. That node is the key to the entire array. Its control crystals are tuned to Agrathi neural patterns. We cannot simply hand it to another species. We're not asking to own it, Karst said from the periphery. We're offering to carry it out of the fire while you tell us which levers not to pull. The room sat in poised silence. Behind Jar's hesitation lay decades of work, political promises, and personal pride. Behind Haroun's offer lay the knowledge that if this cascade ran unchecked, thousands would be dead or stranded, and the system poisoned with debris for generations. Professor Amani stepped into that silence. If we refuse to use the best tool because we fear what it might reveal about us, she said, we will live with the consequences. Every species here depends on those orbits. Cooperation is not an abstract virtue. It is how we survive the worst outcomes of our own ingenuity. She glanced at Jar. You know the array's behavior. They know how to stand up under gravity. Your pilots cannot. Put those together. Eldrin's webbed fingers flexed. Scientist Kova, he said quietly, your clade built the array to protect Trappist-1. Let us not allow fear of embarrassment to destroy what you meant to safeguard. Zar's internal calculus ran fast and hot. He recalled Callian steadying a trembling Agrathi in the gravitation chamber without comment, and humans hauling more than their share of heavy loads in joint drills. Very well, he said. I will guide a team. But a Agrathi engineer must be physically present at the node. Agreed, Haroun said quickly. Karst turned to his people. This is voluntary, he told them. The field near the array will spike. Debris will be present. You could be injured or killed. No one is ordered into this. Callian's hand rose as if pulled. He heard his heartbeat in his ears, saw flashes of Earth's first rockets punching through atmosphere, remembered the fierce calm in his parents' voices when they spoke about why they'd sent him off-world. I volunteer, he said. Amaya's hand followed. You'll need someone to remind him how to breathe, she said. Paco Andrade and Alara Seo stepped up as well. Someone has to keep the hull together, Paco said. And someone has to thread the needle, Alara added. Luska, standing at the edge of the group, weighed her calling. I request to accompany as an observer, she said. What happens there will be studied by every cadet who comes after us. It should be documented. Only if you stay where it's safest, Karst replied. Preparation blurred into motion. In the docking ring, crews stripped a compact training vessel down to essentials and built it back up for survival. Paco oversaw reinforcement of decks and bulkheads. We layer high-tensile composites over Thalkeen's shock-absorbing gels, he explained to a mixed maintenance team. Rigid under normal loads, yielding under spikes. It'll flex instead of snap when the array burps. Alara reprogrammed navigation arrays with fresh gravity telemetry. We'll aim burns when we're closest to Trappist-1, she said. Small course changes there mean big orbit shifts. But we have to model the pulsing field. It'll be like surfing moving hills instead of a smooth well. In Med, Dr. Farouk and Orville Kess worked side by side on compression suits. Human high-G gear squeezes the legs and abdomen, she said as she demonstrated to Orville. Prevents blood from abandoning the head. We add joint reinforcement, so sudden spikes don't tear ligaments. Orville's wide eyes tracked every seam. And your people tolerate this constriction? Better than the alternative, she said. They've been doing it since early jet fighters. At 2:30 a.m. station time, Yuna's Helioforge auxiliary craft undocked. Havenreach receded behind them, a ring of light against the shadowed curve of the super-Earth. Ahead, the navigational display marked Trappist-1's disturbed orbits in pulsing red. As they approached, gravity began to misbehave. One moment, Callion felt almost weightless, his body starting to drift within the suit. The next, an invisible hand shoved him down into the deck, his chest compressed, heart laboring. The compression suit's bladders adjusted, squeezing his legs preemptively. "Remember your training," Farouk called. "In spikes, tense your legs and abdomen. Short exhales. In dips, keep your movements slow. Don't fling yourself into a wall." The Agrathi engineer joining them, Casrel, was less comfortable. Their species preferred steady loads. Each fluctuation sent tremors through their limbs, crowding their mind with an ancient fear of falling. "You're all right," Amaya said over a private channel. "Anchor to the handholds. Move with the pulses. Don't fight the field. Ride it." Outside, Trappist-1 grew from a dot to a disk. Its lit hemisphere glowed under the ruddy star. Its dark side was a faint crescent of city and station lights. Around it, the orbit map resolved into wounded order. Bent cracks, damaged nodes. Helio-Forge Anchor 3 loomed as a skeletal structure, a ring of support beams around a humming core of crystals. Sections were bent or out of true. Debris winked in sunlight as it tumbled nearby. "We'll match velocity and dock at that service port," Alara said. "The truss connecting it to the core is flexing. You'll have to cross it." Callion, Amaya, Karst, Castrel, and a tool drone cycled through the airlock. The stars greeted them with indifferent brilliance. The superstructure of Anchor 3 stretched ahead, flexing slowly as the variable gravity tugged different parts by different amounts. The first step onto the truss felt simple. The second came with a spike. Weight slammed down. The metal under their boots groaned. Callion's knees nearly buckled. His vision narrowed, edges darkening. "Legs," Farouk's voice snapped through his ear. "Squeeze." He obeyed. Blood that had started to drain downward was forced back up. Color edged back into his sight. Casdrel clung to a handhold, all limbs tense. Their breathing spiked, then hitched. This is outside expected tolerance, they managed. "We're all outside our comfort zones," Amaya said. "One step at a time. Focus on your next grip, not the planet." Between pulses, there were brief lulls where the truss felt nearly normal. They used those moments to advance. During surges, they locked in place, letting suits and muscle hold. Tidal differences made the far end of the beam lag slightly behind the near end in response to field shifts. The truss bowed, then relaxed. Every movement set up oscillations. Halfway across, a sudden drop in local gravity after a prolonged spike made everyone's bodies feel alarmingly light. Reflexes honed under constant pull tried to overcompensate. Callion's stomach lurched. For a heartbeat, he felt as though the universe had yanked the floor away. Only his mag boots and harness line kept him from drifting off. "Eyes on the structure," Luska said from the ship, watching via cameras, voice steady. "Trust what you see, not what your inner ear tells you." Inside the node housing, gravity steadied somewhat, but the crystal's hum pressed on their bones like a second sound. The control console glowed with shifting patterns of light, each crystal pulsing with information. "Central phase modulator is unstable," Zar said over the comm from Havenreach. "Automated routines are caught between modes. We need a manual bypass." Casdrel moved to the console, hands hovering just above. "The pathways are entangled," they said. "If we pull the wrong shunt, we could dump more energy into the wrong band." "Describe what you see," Callion said, stepping close. "Shape and position." I'll move what you can't reach when the spikes hit. Kaz swallowed. Second row from the top. Third crystal from your left teardrop shape. That's channel 3. Top row. Fifth from left hexagon. Channel 5. Power shunt is the rectangular block under your right hand, 2 of your fingers tall. Another surge hit. The compactor effect formed tight lines around Callion's skull. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it. Smart fabric squeezed his calves with extra force. "Stay with me, Bandari," Farouk said sharply. "This is what you trained for. Short breath in, grunt out. Use your legs as pumps." He found the shunt by touch and disconnected it. The crystal's glow flickered, rearranging into a jittery but less frantic pattern. The whole node shivered as some loads redistributed. Paco's voice cut in. "Use the universal conductor. Coil of silver wire in your second tool pouch. Link those 2 channels so they share load." Callion's fingers, clumsy in gloves, fumbled a moment, then looped the wire between teardrop and hexagon. Zar watched his displays. "Good. Now we must bleed off the accumulated energy in a controlled fashion. Manual dampening sequence on Cass's panel. It will create a spike, higher than anything you've experienced so far." Mireille did not bother to soften it. "Everyone, brace. Get low. Spread your body along the deck to distribute load. Protect your vitals. This is going to hurt." In those seconds, the rescue team scattered into practiced positions. Amaya wedged herself under a beam, ready to physically hold it in place if connections strained. Kazdrel anchored limbs around console supports, fingers hovering over a black crystal Cass identified as the manual trigger. "On 0, Zar said. 3, 2, 1, Cass pressed. Gravity surged like an angry tide. Pressure gripped every blood vessel and joint. Callion felt his chest compress around his lungs, his heart struggling to move syrup-thick blood uphill. His face burned. Capillaries threatened to rupture. His instincts screamed to curl in on himself. Training forced him to do something more useful. He dug his boots into the deck, squeezed every muscle in his lower body, and timed his breaths in short, loud bursts, pushing against his diaphragm. Amaya's world shrank to the beam above her. The spike tried to pour her through the deck. Every vertebra complained. She thought of earlier boot camp exercises, of being told to hold a plank a few seconds longer, and stretched that feeling across this crisis. Pain meant she was alive and still pushing back. The node itself groaned as invisible fields twisted around it. Outside, Anchor 3's frame bent, dumping potential energy into damped oscillations. Orbits around TRAPPIST-1E shifted, but not chaotically now. More like wobbling into new, safer tracks. On Havenreach's main display, debris risk models updated in real time. Projected collision counts dropped. Trajectory overlaps untangled. "Hold," Zar whispered. "Hold. A little longer." Callion's vision tunneled to a narrow shaft. Blackness squeezed in from the edges. He heard only his own breathing and Farouk's distant instructions like echoes. "Not yet," he told his failing synapses. "Not until they're safe." At last, the spike broke. Gravity fell back toward normal like a lurching elevator. The sudden lightness made everyone's muscles over-respond. Callion toppled sideways and lay panting, the deck pleasantly firm under him. "Status," Amaya rasped. "Conscious," Callion managed. Kazdrel flexed shaky limbs. Conscious, they echoed. Jar's voice came, this time carrying genuine relief. The feedback loop is gone. Anchor 3 is in low-power stable mode. We can perform a controlled shutdown sequence remotely. In the orbits around TRAPPIST-1e, debris still threatened, but the exponential chain had been stopped before the point of no return. Tug crews could now work the problem without being flayed by wild fields. Humans and aliens together patched damaged modules, nudged derelicts into graveyard orbits, and ferried injured researchers to safer stations. Luska recorded as much as she dared, knowing that her future documentary would show sweat and fear as much as triumph. When the auxiliary craft finally eased back into Havenreach's embrace, the docking bay was fuller than regulation allowed. Cadets and staff from half the known species watched through thick glass as the airlock cycled. Callion emerged with care. The compression suit had left faint patterns on his skin where it had squeezed hardest. Every muscle ached. He had never felt so tired or so clear. Applause started somewhere in the crowd and spread, unsure at first and then sincere. Some species translated it into equivalent gestures. Beat of tail, ripple of membrane, sudden flare of thermal patch. Karst stepped out behind him, scanning faces. Pride flickered and was quickly suppressed. There were reports to write, injured to debrief, hard questions to ask about why the array had failed at all. In the medwing, Dr. Farouk scanned her team's internal bruises. Orville Kess hovered nearby, watching as human capillaries that had strained to their limits now healed with guided aid. You took damage, Orville said. Subclinical microtears. Elevated cardiac enzymes. Mireille nodded. We overloaded the system. That's why you do this under controlled circumstances as much as possible. We'll integrate this into updated guidelines. Next time we build equipment to share more of this burden instead of dumping it into people. Zarkova visited Callion's bed with an awkwardness that came from a lifetime of not needing to apologize often. I misjudged your species, he said without preamble, and my own design. Callion pushed himself up on one elbow. Your array is still there, he answered. Next version will be better. You'll think about worst-case flows differently. Zar inclined his head. We will design with human operational roles in mind now. Not as emergency add-ons, but as expected participants. That will change our safety factors in ways I had not considered. Luska spent long nights trimming footage into a coherent story. She chose to show human strain up close, not just heroic poses. She highlighted Dr. Farouk's precise explanations of high G physiology, Professor Amani's models of cooperative incentives, Jar's visible shift from guarded pride to humbled collaboration. Her voiceover, recorded in soft velour tones, would later say, We learned that resilience is not merely not breaking. It is bending intelligently, guided by knowledge and by those who see differently. Havenreach periapsis itself changed in small, telling ways. New modules appeared on the training schedule. Mixed species gravity acclimation exercises designed by human and Thalkeen medics together. Seminar series on orbital debris mitigation using TRAPPIST-1e as a case. And workshops where human engineers and Igrathi designers argued amicably over where to add manual overrides. Compression suits based on human designs began to appear in Thalkeen equipment lockers. Igrathi pilots learned simplified anti-G breathing techniques, and Valori gliders experimented with short, controlled runs in low-gravity tracks, discovering the odd pleasure of impact and lift. One evening as the super-Earth rolled ponderously beneath them and the station's window lights dimmed to a simulated dusk, Karst stood at a wide viewport with Amaya and Callion. The world below was a half-lit marble, cloud bands glowing faintly. "Command wants a proposal," Karst said. "Joint Response Unit for High Gravity and Unstable Field Emergencies. Humans as core personnel, with specialists from every species that can tolerate those conditions." Amaya raised an eyebrow. "From don't break anything to please walk into the worst messes in very few cycles. We certainly made an impression." "They saw us at our best," Callion said quietly. "Now we have to make sure our worst doesn't show up out there. We can't make high-risk heroics the default answer." Karst nodded. "That's the other part of the proposal. Better safeguards, better models. Use what happened at TRAPPIST-1E to stop the next accident before someone has to crawl under 4G to fix it." Luska drifted up behind them, recording rig-powered low in deference to the moment. Outside, the Academy's gravitation ring lit up as a new session began. Silhouettes of humans and aliens running side by side under artificial weight. "They will watch this," she said softly. "Young ones, decades from now. They will see a Thalkeen harness linked to a human-designed suit. A Grathi adjusting a gravity field with a human at the console, a Valori learning to run. And they will think it was always this way." Callion smiled, feeling that deep, pleasant ache of muscles that had earned their rest. "Good," he said. "That means we did it right." Havenreach periapsis spun on, a shared experiment in how much a galaxy's varied bodies and minds could carry together when the pull grew heavier than any one of them alone could bear.